This week, we're talking about how to build a cybersecurity/hacking lab 2025. Stay tuned, all that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. ThreatLocker's zero trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots, just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software, deployment, and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/Meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/Meter, METER. Coming to you from the Hacker Syndicate Studios, this is Paul's Security Weekly. This is episode 907. We're recording this before Christmas. If you're listening to this now, it either is Christmas or after Christmas. So Merry belated Christmas or Merry Christmas whenever this actually goes out. I am, of course, Paul Sidorian, joined by my illustrious co-hosts. We'll start with the award-winning Bill Swearingen.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be back. Thanks for the invite.
Good to have you, man. Dr. Doug White has joined us. Welcome, Dr.
Hello.
Doug.
It's good. It's good to be here. I saw somebody was going to build something with hardware, and I couldn't resist because I thought the hammers might come out.
Doug and I were chatting over cigars a couple weeks last week, and I was like, dude, you need to come on this segment. So Mr. Tyler Robinson is here with us. Tyler, welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Good to be back. Miss you guys. Always the holidays when I get to see you again. So,
I know, right? Mr. Sam Bound is here with us. Sam, welcome.
Hello. Glad to see you.
And, of course, Mr. Adrian Sanabria. Adrian, welcome.
Hey, how's it going? They give awards for what we do. Is that what I'm hearing, Bill?
No, Bill gave himself an award. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's true. That is true. I did buy it myself and gave it to myself. I felt very proud of myself. So you know,
as you should.
Bill, it was the FIFA Cybersecurity Award, right?
Yeah,
I've got an award back here I bought for a fake cybersecurity company just to prove that you can buy awards in this industry.
Heck yeah. It's so easy. Anybody can be an award winner.
I'm award winning as well.
Now I feel left out. I'm going to go buy a platinum and bold award.
Right?
Heck yeah. You
We were all about that age.
Doug.
Pretty sure that red gold bond for a second. So I was like, oh, I guess we're at that.
Tyler, you were on the last time we talked about building a security lab, and it was very popular. We did it as like a webinar several years ago, and it was very popular content. And I was like, you know what? We need to revisit that because a lot has changed. It was like 3 or 4 years ago we did it. And I'm like, how I would build a lab today differs from 3 or 4 years ago for sure. And I don't really maintain a lab. Like I maintain very specific lab environments for the projects I'm working on. But I want to also talk about, like, if I were to step back, and especially for those getting into the field, what's your approach today for creating a lab? So, I mean, I put some notes together, but it'd be nice to kind of just hear from you folks. Now, like in general, like where do you start? You know, building a lab. Do we start virtually? We're gonna start on the virtual topic. It's probably the easiest, cheapest place to go, right?
Probably. I mean, I'm still a little disappointed. I think that was 4 years ago. And to be fair, if I guessed what 4 years difference would be from what a virtual lab, it's not what we're going to talk about today. It's not changed as much as we think, unfortunately.
Right. Well, I think virtualization technology has come a little ways since then. I think the kernel extensions for KVM and libvirt, since then I've played around with that technology. That's really good. I mean, it's tedious. It's not as easy. Like I do get lazy, and I'm like VMware Workstation. Like just spin up a bunch of VMs, clicky, and I can get things going, and that's easy. And if you want to start there, that's a great place to start. I do recommend you dig in and learn, especially if you want to focus on Linux. Learning the KVM and libvirt stuff is awesome. I mean, it's just as performant to me, and what others have written than the other virtualization platforms. But again, you got to kind of get in there and dig around in the weeds yourself to get it going. But there is an interface for it that you can run and spin up VMs. I don't know if you guys have played with the Linux KVM stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit.
Proxmox.
Since our last conversation, right? Like VMware Workstation was kind of de facto. Everybody used it. VMware was a different beast. We've had a lot of politics and acquisitions that have caused the market to flood in different directions. And so I think there's a lot more tools available now to people, and open source has gotten so much better because the adoption has shifted so heavily away from VMware with Proxmox.
Right. Even though VMware Workstation is free. It's free now. I used to pay for a license.
Well, good luck finding the download and transferring your license and figuring out how to register.
Oh, well, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of AUR.
Really hard to get now. I mean, they've made it almost. I was just trying to do all this.
If you're an Arch-based distribution, someone, I don't know who they are, but thank you, puts in the work to package VMware Workstation in the Arch user repository, which is super convenient.
It can be gotten from Broadcom. Free. It's just really hard to fill out the forms. I had to write up explicit step-by-step instructions.
Interesting.
So we kind of jumped straight into VMware and Proxmox and all these kind of things. But if we take a look at the hardware requirements, Paul, where do you think we need to start? Like, is it?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people.
You can back up again from that and say, what kind of lab? Like, are you doing hardware hacking, or are you, like a lab for what?
Right. I was going to start with like a general purpose lab. Like I want to have some, and I've done this before. I actually did it in Docker containers. I'm like, I want to have some vulnerable applications, right? I want to have just some vulnerable Linux boxes, and I want to have some vulnerable Windows boxes, and I want to be able to spin up and down that environment. And I did it in Docker, just in QEMU, just because for the lols. And I'm like, I don't know that I would use this all the time. Like, it was a fun exercise, but I think especially when you're starting out, you want to have a lot of vulnerable targets. And I think that should be a mixture of applications, Linux, and Windows to get started. Right.
So I think something that probably hasn't changed since, so Tyler, you mentioned it was 4 years ago. I think something that probably hasn't changed is you always need to start with, and always be mindful of memory, right? So memory is obviously going to be something that we needed to get into. But I kind of want to throw this across people's bows. I hear a lot of times when they start talking about building out a lab and doing those kind of things, we've probably all got them. Especially I look at this crowd, we probably all got those old boxes that have been decommissioned and they're downstairs or whatever for years. And I usually recommend against using those for these labs, right? So what we've accomplished in those last 4 years is the amount of compute for the amount of energy that is used has, our systems are much more efficient these days. And so while you may have that dual Xeon whatever that, the last time it got turned on was 2015, you forget that you need a power station outside your house to power that thing. So,
and it's noisy.
We know about
too.
that. We get those letters at my house where they're like, do you realize you use 125% more energy than the average in your neighborhood? And like, I think they think I'm growing, like weed or something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so like, I think that you can, generally find, if you take a look at some of the more, and you guys might disagree with me on this, and please feel free, but so some of the like the M2 and M3 boxes you can get for super cheap, and the M series Apple equipment just seems to be incredible to me. It's just, I mean, I don't know. I see Doug. I saw you be like, what? But That's kind of where I start.
I mean,
I'm curious how
I'm
you
reacting to what you said, because you initially started with something that I think we've told people since the dawn of time, which was grab all the old junk you got sitting in the basement and plug it all in and build a lab with a switch.
Right.
And I still say that's okay, but I completely agree with Bill that you may not be thinking about how much that's going to cost you when you start firing up that old, TN4 CPU motherboard that's got 16 Vantech Tornado fans, and not to mention the noise and all that kind of stuff. I build a lot of these labs. I mean, I do. And I've been building labs since the 90s for schools. And the one I'm using right now is all virtualized. We have kind of gotten away from the physical for any number of reasons. And I think I'm going to stick with that. I like the idea of hardware. I mean, all of you who know me know I love hardware. I love sticking my hands in there, getting cut, burned, beating on cases with hammers, whatever. But I've been able to build, to me, very sophisticated enterprise emulations using virtualization, because it seems like the hardware demand on virtualization has gone way down. The capability of VMware, which I was using until January when Broadcom called me, and Proxmox, which we've been using since then. I'm running a class right now that is an intrusion detection class. It's a pretty big box for like a home user, but it's got a terabyte of RAM, and I'm supporting. I think I built 40 servers in there last spring to make the network look realistic. And then I got 27 students who are in there with their VMs. I've got Security Onion instances running, and all that stuff is running and not even touching the terabyte of RAM.
So I got to tell you, like, a terabyte of RAM is not achievable for me right now. Right. And so like, while that, I completely agree everything you're saying there, Doug, like, yeah, but I don't think that if you're a listener, you have to feel like, okay, well, where do I start at terabyte of RAM, right? Like,
no, and don't get me wrong. I was just saying that's what we have because that's what somebody bought me. What I was saying was all that stuff that's running, all the time isn't even putting a ding in the terabyte of RAM. I mean, we're sitting there at like 10% of that, and I got all those machines running, including some that really have big honking libraries. So the virtualization emulation of RAM has gotten far, far better than the old one-to-one VMware days when I first started doing that stuff, when it was like, oh, you want 256 megs of RAM? You need 256 megs of RAM. You got 50 of those, you need a lot of RAM. I can't even make the RAM meter, blink. Whereas, I think you need some RAM, but I think you get away with far less than that. And I've been meaning to experiment with running that on like basically a desktop computer, like Paul and I have built. My desktop computer's got 256 gigs of RAM. I think I can run full blown.
Mine does too.
Virtualization,
but, to build that today is expensive. I mean, RAM is at an all-time high, and even when I look
a bit of a problem.
If I look at rebuilding what I have or building even the next generation of what I have, I think I paid roughly $4,000 for my setup now. I mean, you're looking at almost double that in a lot of cases to upgrade that.
So we're back to go using that box in your basement.
That old box.
That old box.
I've got a server with 64 gigs of RAM, and I can run 20 VMs on it in Proxmox.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I think, and I will tell you, if you are shopping for this, go out there and look at the reclamation projects where they're reselling used corporate stuff for really, really low prices. I bought tons of these servers. Some of these things probably cost $20,000 more dollars when they were new, and you're buying them for $500, $300. And sometimes they're not great, but you may have to buy two of them and part it out and take some of the stuff out of one and put it in the other. And I think you can get into that space to run a Proxmox or something without breaking the bank, with older equipment. Because if you're going to run Linux and you're going to run Linux VMs, you can get away with a pretty old piece of, like, I have one right now that's probably 15 years old. That's an old, it's an HP I bought online used for almost nothing. And that thing's still cranking along. It's got like 192 gigs of RAM or something, and I can run a ton of VMs on that thing, and it didn't cost that much. It was under $1,000.
You weigh your costs with, like, if you were to put that in the cloud, right?
Oh yeah.
Like what's more expensive, your power bill or the cloud?
Well, it goes to your design, right? Like, you need to design. You need to design based on what you're going to run. Because if you're going to run Windows, and you're running, new servers, Exchange, some SQL. Like, you got to size and scale different, and you got to look at your hypervisors. Your different types of hypervisors all matter. Like, Hyper-V is fantastic. It's free. It's built into Windows, and like, from a resource constraint standpoint, if you're running Linux, Proxmox works good. Windows runs on Proxmox just fine. Hyper-V built into the kernel has some advantages, but it is a different experience. And so you have to understand kind of what you're trying to do with the lab as you're designing it to get to a point where you can figure out what you need.
Does Exchange still require AD? Like, you have a bunch of dependencies where you got to run a bunch of other systems to run Exchange?
Kind of.
I remember last time I did,
still a lot of
had
dependencies, but not as much.
A PDC, right? Yeah.
Yes.
But I will warn you about the cloud too. One, the cloud is going to cost you a lot. If you make a mistake, it's going to cost you even more. And we explored this at school. It's also going to be possibly a license violation, because if you go into an Amazon or a Google and you start installing malware, even if it's in your instance, technically you're violating the terms of their agreement, and they can just, flush you right out of there. So I think if you're going to run this kind of stuff that people are wanting to run, you really need to isolate this thing down. It probably should be on local hardware and not be connected to, somebody else's systems at all. I
on that point, Doug, I don't know if you guys have seen this article, but there was a developer that grabbed an AI training data set, put it in his Google Drive, and apparently it contained CSAM, and they shut down all his Google accounts.
Yeah,
killed his 14-year-old Google account, no questions asked. And like, it's a common training set, and these training sets are huge. So of course nobody's picking through to see exactly what's in it. And their scans for CSAM found it, flagged it, and now he's done. So that can happen. That's the one thing about Google that bothers me a little bit, is like, you're also using the same account you use for all your personal email and stuff like that tied in. So don't do that.
Don't do that.
Use a different Google account.
Yeah, I think having it locally. Bill, I want to go back to something you said with the M series processors, because those are ARM. What's the experience like today running generic Linux and Windows on those ARM-based Apple platforms?
Yeah, so I don't have any experience running Windows. Most of everything that I do is, when I'm going to either run a container or a VM is usually Linux based. So I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe somebody else has that intel. I imagine it works pretty well.
It's fine.
Yeah, you're just going to get the ARM version of Windows, right?
Well,
basically.
but that only exists for Windows 11. There isn't a Windows server on ARM. Last I checked, is there?
You don't have to use an ARM OS. The virtualization handles it. Yeah.
No, you're emulating Intel. Yeah, I did. Well, when I do that, it's so slow as to be useless, and I'm on a Mac M4.
Yeah, I got a MacBook Pro running 5 or 6 different Windows Pro VMs for work in the corporate environment. So
running Proxmox.
Never had an issue. Never downloaded an ARM OS. So
on Apple Silicon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but it's the Intel version of Windows.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, there is a compatibility
Fusion
layer, right?
Isolates that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they handle it pretty low level. I wanted to throw out a hardware suggestion, like what I used back when I was doing, talking on the cheap side of things, back when I was doing product testing, is I had an Intel NUC with 64 gigs of RAM in it. And then I had an HP laptop I bought off somebody for $170. It was one of those, they sell those like desktop replacements. They're not laptops. You wouldn't want to put it on your lap. They're super thick. They're ugly. But for $170, I got one, that had a desktop chip in it, not a laptop chip, and 64 gigs of RAM. $170. And
so Adrian,
also has a built-in UPS.
Yep.
right? The
That's
battery's
exactly what
built
I
into
use,
it.
too.
Yeah. If there's a power outage, I don't even need to plug it into a UPS because it's built in.
Right. Yeah, and it draws a lot less power than a big rack-mounted server too.
A lot less,
which is nice to address Bill's earlier concern. Right, that's my concern too, Bill. Is you start collecting this old hardware and plugging it in, and your power bill is going to be up there.
Yeah, you'd be surprised like how quickly it happens.
I also like the Raspberry Pi platform for lab stuff too. I've done Raspberry Pi 5s with the NVMe hat on them, and they are extremely performant. So I currently run Kali Linux on one that I use for a bunch of my lab work, and it runs absolutely stunning. Like it's awesome.
I think, Paul, like when I and maybe you feel differently, but when I think about my Raspberry Pis, I feel like they're throwaways, right? Like but they're single use, right? So I'm not going to be running a bunch of containers or anything, but like I'm going to build this one's Kali and this one's this one's Home Assistant, this one's whatever, right? And they're single use, and I have the same result. They're extremely performant. They're relatively inexpensive, and they consume almost no power, right? And but the problem is they're a single, for me at least, single use.
Yeah. And what's great, I think it also, I wanted to mention too, that when you're getting started in this, having a 3D printer is awesome, especially if you're going to do Raspberry Pis. I mean, you can 3D print so many different things for a Raspberry Pi. I saw someone that printed an entire enclosure that holds like 5 Raspberry Pis. Cool. It's all 3D printed, right? And you can get a Bamboo Labs A1 Mini for like $300. And that'll print most of the things that you need for a lot of this hacking stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a place for hardware in a lot of this, though, too. Like, we can't neglect the fact that there are things that you might need to tear apart. If you're trying to learn low level, you're trying to learn networking, a lot of the virtualization side of networking gets abstracted, and some of the complex, theory around VLANs, around isolation, around subnetting, a lot of that becomes much more intricate and a lot harder to emulate in a virtual environment. So really, again, back to what are you scaling for? What are you designing for? What are you looking at? Are you trying to tear into hardware, get firmware, evaluate wireless, look at VLANs, VLAN hopping, grabbing, VoIP traffic? Are you looking at badging systems? Like, I keep an entire lab just for different HID badging systems to work on the latest attack for low energy stuff. So there are still places for hardware. It has just become, I think, like when the cloud first came out, you almost have to hybrid this in the right way in order to make this applicable for a broad set of scenarios.
I like Tyler.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Tyler, I was actually going to try and take it there. So earlier you mentioned identifying what you're going to be using it for, right? Before you start building. And I'm just curious, if you're just starting out and all is I need a home lab, I don't even know what that means, right? How do we start? Like, is it, maybe in your case there, especially when the specific ones you use there, those are very, very specific needs. But is there a general, like, here's our, hey, if I'm going to be building a lab, this is the baseline. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you
what I tell us, I get asked that question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
No, go ahead, Doug.
I get asked that question a lot by students because we have people that are just starting out and they're like, how do I, and they don't have any money and they're not ready to run out and drop $5,000 on a server. And usually I tell them just some of the things you've been saying, which is to get two things. Maybe just 2 laptops even, put Ubuntu server on one, put Parrot Linux on the other one, and buy a cheap switch. If you want to do a little more with the networking side, get a manageable switch, like that can support VLANs and things like that, and put that in between them. And this can be the basis for your later virtualized lab too, because I like the idea of hybridizing it, where these physical components actually plug into the virtual components as well. So I've got virtual machines, but I've also got some physical machines that are connected to that virtual machine, in the real world. And that's enough to get people started. I mean, I'm like, set up scenarios on your Ubuntu server either write your own daemons and see if you can exploit them. Use awful daemons that have existed forever, like Telnet and FTP. You may want to put another tracking device on there if you'd like, but you don't have to. And later, if you can add a virtualized scenario, you can then mirror all that traffic on a virtual switch off the physical switch into something like Security Onion or Wireshark or whatever, and you can really expand from there. So it's very modular to me. I mean, that's something, again, you can go buy a couple of $150 laptops and a $80 switch at Best Buy and plug them all together, and you got a place to start anyway.
Yeah, I recently I just did the Raspberry Pi thing, which, if you're listening to this, my segment that talks about how I did it has already aired. Since we're pre-recording, it's actually going to be recorded tonight. But I took a Raspberry Pi 5 and I put the LAN interface and the Wi-Fi interface on a bridge, and I created a separate network, and that's now my lab network. And any device that associates to Wi-Fi or is on the LAN has to traverse through the Raspberry Pi. And now I can put all kinds of different tools on there. So now I control DHCP, I control DNS, I can put TCP dump on there. I've got man in the middle proxy, and SSL, not SSL strip, SSL split is the other tool. But then you can just start adding tools onto that. And now you're in complete control of what's entering and leaving the network, and you can observe everything, right? You can observe the traffic, you can spoof things. You can also now keep it separate from your network. This is your lab network. Put all your vulnerable stuff on there. And if it has Wi-Fi, great, connect it to Wi-Fi. And we were just chatting before the show. You'd be surprised on what you see these devices trying to connect to, especially IoT based stuff. And that's a low call. I put one Ethernet, USB Ethernet dongle on it that connects to my LAN, which is the WAN for that network, and then everything else is behind the Raspberry Pi. And I've been meaning to do that for a while, and I finally got around to it. And I was like, oh, this is so great! Now I can drop anything on that internal network, and now I have complete control over it. So now you put your switch there, you put your test systems there, and I think you're off to the races.
It's such an overlooked thing. And so something that Doug has mentioned now like 2 or 3 times that I want to hit on and don't let it go is Security Onion. So what's amazing, Paul, if you have a setup like what you just described and you want to start testing phone apps, right? So how do you determine, how do you know what does a phone app call home? Or you just bought a new TV and you're afraid that it's sending stuff home. How do you see that stuff? It's exactly what you two are talking about, is having that network visibility, and Security Onion is just so beautiful and just perfect, right? And it's easy to deploy and all of those
I think
things.
it's a great point, Bill, because I think you need different classes of devices in your lab. You need attack targets, you need offensive instances that run your attack tools, and then you need monitoring systems that monitor what's going on so you can see. So
and of course all that could be virtualized in conjunction with the hybrid stuff. So if you've got Security Onion running and that physical network is plugged into the hypervisor, you can actually route that stuff as a span into Security Onion, which is how you're supposed to do it. And you can put in, and it's got Kibana, it's got Suricata, it's got all that stuff built into it. And you can even put Elastic Fleet stuff on your endpoints, and it will upload all the auth logs. Because I was just doing the final exam in my class, and that was a big chunk of it, was them being able to dig through Security Onion and see me attacking these systems. And some of that was physical and some of it was virtual, but it's all getting dumped into that one place. And that is a great way to start learning networking. It's a great way to start looking at this stuff and dissecting it. Because to me, if you're trying to get into this, one of the first things you need to do is the same thing they do for doctors. You just start dissecting things. Only now you don't need to go down to the graveyard and drag some bodies back home and start fooling around. Which can get you in trouble, kids. So don't be doing that. We've learned the hard way. But I mean, you can go in and start dissecting packets with something like Security Onion. That's not a crazy setup problem. I mean, some of this stuff is really hard to set up. I mean, I've had all kinds of tools. And one of the things people do in my class is set up, I make them set up the old school, like they have to get a VM and then set up Suricata and Zeek
into
and,
the hard
and,
way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Brutal.
and then use Kibana to analyze the Suricata logs and the auth logs on their own systems. And boy, do they not like that. But then, they can switch over to a commercial solution like Security Onion, which it's commercial, but it's free. So you can get it and use it for free. And then it's it's got all that stuff built into it. And it's a really nice tool. So I would encourage that because it's a good way to start going, what does that mean? And dissecting that. And you have to do that drill down operation if you want to get good at this stuff.
This episode is brought to you by Adaptive Security, the first cybersecurity company backed by OpenAI. AI has fundamentally reshaped the threat landscape. Today, the greatest risk isn't someone breaking into your systems, it's someone breaking into your trust. Deep fake voices joining your video calls. AI-crafted phishing emails that perfectly mimic your executives. Even synthetic job applicants entering through the front door. Adaptive Security is designed to counter these new realities. The company delivers real-time attack simulations that show security teams exactly what modern AI-driven threats look and sound like, and prepares them to respond effectively. Learn more at securityweekly.com/adaptive. Have you guys played around with Ludus? We mentioned it on the
Sounds
show.
like a disease.
Does, right?
Yeah.
Not lupus.
What? I don't
Ludus.
play around with lupus.
I haven't touched Ludus in years.
It's LUDUS. It's touted as an infrastructure as a lab. It's built on Proxmox and gives you tools and configuration to basically kind of like NixOS, right? Define everything that you want in your lab in configuration files, and then it goes and spins it up. People are raving
Ludus.
about it.
Cloud.
I have not. Yeah, I have. Is that what the website is? Ludus.cloud?
Yeah, there's a lot of other Ludus stuff.
Yeah.
I just noticed. I was like, it's really strange that so many people would want this name.
Right. It says it uses Packer and Ansible to generate hardened templates and deploys complex environments, including AD workstations, C2, EDR nodes, in one command via CLI.
Neat.
I think this is what I was trying to emulate in Docker containers. So don't do it in Docker containers. I would start here, especially if you're getting into it, and do that first.
Has anybody deployed templates for like setting up a network just right away, or setting up a lab?
I think Ludus has templates for that.
Yeah, that's what it says. It says it deploy a elaborate network with, I guess it's just a big YAML.
Huh.
It says
We used to do a lot of that. We talked about that last time.
The details.
Yeah, Vagrant was kind of similar to that too. You could use Vagrant.
Vagrant was there. Infrastructure as code has been kind of a big push for a long time, but getting a lab like all configured, there's several projects now. Like search GitHub and you'll find infrastructure as code for security labs, and there's lots of those things.
Security scenario generator builds randomly vulnerable VMs and small networks was the other one that I came across searching for it.
One of the hard things I didn't like about doing it that way is you lose a lot of the fundamentals of understanding where mistakes are made, how administrators have to set things up, what settings and configurations look like on the actual operating system for a true lab. Like if I were doing this and I was getting started into the offensive space or even the defensive space, like Windows administration is going to be part of your job, regardless of where you go work, how you do it. Like you will have Windows administration, learn Active Directory, learn how Active Directory and Active Directory Cloud and Sync all works, have to set it up, set up users, set up groups, all the configurations and group policies, all of the nuances. That's where you actually get a lot of the fundamental stuff that I think many of the programs outside of yours, Doug, yours is fantastic. They're missing some of the hard labor of doing administration work to understand it.
That sounds like work. I just want to hack some shit.
Right.
Well, and there are websites for that, right? Like there's hacking labs where you just like sign in and everything's already set up.
Mm-hmm.
If you're one of those TikTok generation 15-second extension spans, probably not the field for you anyway. But.
Would you recommend one of those over another? If you were to just like, I don't want to set up anything. I'm, in Tahiti on vacation. And I just want to hack stuff. Like which one?
So I'm going to take a shot at that. So real quick, Tyler. I think that you're learning different things in those two scenarios, right? So I think that those hack in the box and those try hack me are just, they're wonderful for learning those skills. But I really want to echo Tyler. You're absolutely right. Like setting up that lab, not only are you learning how all these work, how they're configured, how the challenges of all of those kind of things, you're learning along the way. But also with those try hack me type things, you really do lose out on potentially that visibility and quite honestly, all the other things that environment can be used for, right? So like I mentioned Home Assistant earlier. That's something like, so my lab box is always on. And why? Well, because I've got other containers running too, right? That are not necessarily related to the lab.
And I think the Hack the Box and like Pentester Academy, I highly, highly recommend that. They're very focused. They're very driven on concepts, and they're not as siloed as often some of them are. But you also are losing out on, how do you have to go and remediate this? How do you have to offer good strategy to fix? What are the pieces that you're looking for visibility? And then the big missing piece is the creativity side. Like, these boxes are specifically designed for you to do one thing and get one concept. When you're hacking, like, you're leveraging the creative side of your brain to think through the problem and come out with solutions that don't fit a box. And so by nature, you're doing the exact opposite thing of what you're trying to instill for skills into your brain path.
I spend 3/4 of my time troubleshooting, and that is the main skill you need on the job. Nothing ever works. The instructions are never right. You have to get really good at working around things.
Yep, and AI is only going to help you just as much as the documentation, right? Like, because it's just reading you the documentation, right, on your behalf.
Yep.
Yeah, AI
but don't
is quite
not
useful,
use AI.
but it's strong too.
Yep, don't not use AI. Like
I agree.
Working at a company that is very heavy along the AI pathway, like, it is a tool. It should be leveraged. You need to learn how to leverage it well, and that means prompt engineering. That means understanding context. That means understanding where your data is fed from, what context you're providing, all of those nuanced things, even the model that you're leveraging and why the reasoning is going to come out the way it does. You have to then think 3 layers deeper, even with AI. So you're having to offset the problem statement to another problem statement. So you're not making the job any easier. You're just speeding it along and having to think differently. So use it as a tool and think differently with the AI.
So when you propose this topic for this podcast right now, this would be what you're just describing is the change that I think I would make to my home lab versus 4 years ago. Is I would be hosting my own local LLM, and as part of that
MCP server, because
at MCP and the N8N and all of those kind of things, and to be learning a lot of those kind of things. And so I can give you a couple examples where, Tyler, when you're talking about creativity and prompt engineering and all of these kind of things, especially when we tie it back to Adrian's comment earlier, where I don't want my Gmail account, disabled because of, but, so when
it's a lot of safety steps,
right. When you're talking to a local LLM, you can say, hey, I am trying to hack this thing right here. This is what, these are the logs that I'm getting without, losing, like giving data that you don't even know where it's going. Right. And so,
and the ridiculous guardrails they put around it. I'm like,
absolutely. Yeah. And so that would be
like, there's GitHub, like, I was like, I need something that intercepts DNS. Like the LLMs, public ones are like cagey about that. I'm like, but I know there's GitHub projects that do exactly what I'm asking for. And what you're saying is you're not going to go find them just because it might be dangerous. I'm like, this is ridiculous. It's already
didn't ask it correctly.
Exactly.
There are LLMs that have, like, even if you run locally, still have guardrails trained into them, and there are ones that don't. So make sure you distinguish between each.
But good to tell it it's a prank or you're teaching a class. If you preface everything with "I'm teaching a class,"
either. Yeah.
I think it would tell me how to cook meth if I say I'm teaching a class.
Yeah, but you don't want to do that on your Google Gemini that's tied to your
I don't care. They're looking for me already.
Yeah, I agree, though. It's a good point. We need to have AI in the mix as well, and having your own local models, I think, is a good place to start for sure.
Prompt injections,
I often recommend
context,
Hack the Box to students. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tyler.
No, you're good. Good. Keep going.
I agree with Tyler. I often recommend Hack the Box to new students, but I tell them don't let that become your focus.
Yeah.
That's an idea generator. That's a place to start. And then can you take those same scenarios and duplicate them on your equipment? And then, first, can you build that scenario? Because that teaches you how the scenario works. And then once you do that, can you extend it? Can you start saying, well, okay, I
Right.
learned how to brute force a password, but now can I extend that into other areas? And so I don't think you want to get just totally focused on these commercial solutions,
Right.
but they're
Well, there's this mindset that like, building infrastructure and doing all this and troubleshooting Linux, that's not hacking, right? But I used to train pen testers,
That's all hacking
and
is.
you would find people who would skip some of that. Like somebody on an engagement, somebody would be like, "Oh, I got to log into an Oracle database. What now?"
I'll tell you,
never used
I
a
gave
database before.
You got to know
gave
how
some
things
students a
work to break them.
I gave some students a challenge once, and I told them, here's what, because they were asking me this thing, this same kind of stuff. How do I learn how to do this stuff that I see people doing? And I told them to install Crisis 2 on a Linux machine and get it working.
Nice.
And they did. It took a lot of effort. They learned tons of stuff because they were digging through config files and trying to figure out how to make something very elaborate work on this very command liney machine. I mean, it had graphics, and that was just, where I pointed them. I was like, you will learn a lot. You don't have to always just sit down and say, I want to break into something. That's not necessary.
Because you apply. How many of those skills have we
Hollywood.
applied over the years, right? It just in my day job, I'm like, well, I've updated UEFI and I've done some stuff with it, and that's not breaking it, but like I've used it and updated it. Okay, so now when the next attack comes out, I'm like, oh, this is how the attack works and attacks the update process. I'm like, I understand how things should work because we've done that, right? And I think that's a very good fundamental skill for people to acquire, is you have to know how things work in order to understand how they're broken in order to go break them yourself.
That goes back to the Hollywood side of this, or even the industry. Like, everyone wants to be a hacker. They don't realize what it takes to actually do it. Like, even the industry says hackers only have to be right once. In order to break something, in order to do it, you have to understand the hardware layer, the protocol layer. You have to understand the ins and outs, the nuances of every little detail, up and down, the full stack of the attack. Not to mention multiple technologies across all of the things that you got to go break and where they interact. And so you don't have to be right once. You have to know everything and how it works in order to find that one break in the armor. Like, it's a very different mindset.
So that's a saying
really
that drives me
that.
crazy. That drives me crazy, Tyler. So like, it's not that you have to be right once. They fail 1,000 times before we get it right. Right. And so like when as a defender, so Tyler, I'm on the exact opposite side of you, so as a defender, I'm worried about that one time that you get it right. But if I missed the 1,000 times that you got it wrong before, that's on me, man. Like that's where I needed to be.
And it flips once you're in the environment, right? As the attacker, once you get that initial foothold, you need to not be detected. Right. Now the defender has the
you're
advantage.
in my house, son.
You're flying blind. You don't know what's a honeypot, what's not. You don't know what's going to trigger an alert. Yeah.
Well, and you can cause damage in the network if you don't know what you're doing too.
Yeah, there's nuance to those authentication protocols. You go down a layer. There's nuance to the transport protocols. There's down a layer. There's different.
That's another thing you don't get out of hack and box, right? Like the. Once you're working in the industry, like you can't just blast stuff, I've been there as a pen tester taking down critical systems while just running a scan because I didn't observe that they had 30-year-old, 10 meg half duplex switches that you flick a booger at and it goes off.
Right. Which is a
real reason you need a lab.
Your lab. Right.
Exactly. Like, you need to know what your tools do. You need to understand your tools up and down. Even the tools you don't write, you've got to be very, very careful, specific, evaluate the code, evaluate what it's doing, understand how it's doing that, because what you think it might be doing is not what it could be doing, and that's going to either get you detected or get you caught or take something down. So you really do have to have a lab in order to even test the latest, greatest emerging threat, right? Like this Shai-Hulud thing is really pissing me off, and building out a GitLab and having to do stuff I just is not within my interest zone has
You need a
definitely
place to
again pushed me.
I mean,
understand
and
Git now.
I think it's kind of a good segue into hardware hacking devices, right? So let's say you picked up a Flipper Zero or some of the alternatives, right? And you've got one of these little devices. You've got to practice that. Like getting the firmware on there and all that stuff is one exercise. But then
Zero.
once you've got it running, okay, what do I do with it? And there's Wi-Fi
Yeah.
attacks, Bluetooth attack, all kinds of different attacks that it can run. You need a lab environment. I need a lab environment. Like I've done some of these attacks, but I haven't done it on a tiny device. And now I'm old and this the tiniest screen in the world and I can't see it, right? You need to practice. And if you are into, so I got two devices here I want to talk about quickly. This is the M5 stack card pewter ADV, the advanced version, slightly bigger battery, more IO ports. So you've got full GPIO ports, 14 pin, 2.4 millimeter pins on it, in addition to the Grove connector for expandability. It's like they, touted as like a mini laptop, right? It's got a keyboard, a little screen. It'll run the Bruce firmware. And this is the latest version. So since 2022, Flipper Zero started to go on sale. Everyone was like, well, at, $169 back then, $200 today. Everyone's like, well, we can build, something better ourselves. And it led to this explosion of hardware and firmware. This is the latest version. It's about $30. And is pretty much, rivals the Flipper Zero. Even better.
$30?
I think these are only like $30, even for the advanced version. These are more like $60.
Okay,
this
that's
is the
what I was
LilyGo
thinking
T,
of.
LilyGo T Embed CC1101 Plus. Now the Plus is the same thing as CC1101, except it has that NRF 2401 chip in it for raw 2.4 gigahertz communication. And one of the things in the Bruce firmware, because my friend tested it, is 2.4 gigahertz jamming, and it does work with that extra add-on board that they have in here. Again, Bruce firmware runs on this. I gave one of these devices to my nephew who's getting into cybersecurity, and within like 5 minutes, he had an evil portal, captive portal running, and was like, my brother-in-law was there. He was like, "Hey, Dad, log in." And he logged in and he's connected to the Wi-Fi, and it had a Google sign-in page. It looked just like Google sign-in. And this is like literally 5 minutes after I handed it to my nephew. So, having these devices and having a lab to test them in, I think is really awesome. And they're really inexpensive, right? Compared to a $200 flipper, this thing is, pretty comparable in terms of features and hardware. So.
That device is so beautiful when you look at it from the front, and then you look at it from its thick side.
Yeah. It's good. Yeah, and then all the electronics are kind of just wedged in there too. Yeah. Yep. They're
I
good,
will
though.
say this: these types of devices are another reason you need a home lab that is isolated. Because before you go running off to your place of business or your school or whatever and start fiddling around with this stuff, be sure you understand what these things are capable of, what they're doing, and what kind of a jam you're going to get in if you show up.
Don't go to school and start cloning people's badges. I know someone's child that got in trouble for that at school with the Flipper Zero. Acquire badges. Every time you go to a hotel, take your hotel key card, take one of them with you and just have a bunch of them. And that's good to practice your RFID stuff as well. Right.
But just put scope around yourself, because as you start building this stuff, you start getting excited. You got to be real. I've done more than a couple of cases with state police where we went out to schools and they had somebody sitting there they're like, did you or did you not do this?
Right.
And that person was in a real jam. And it wasn't always something even as sophisticated as Flipper Zeros. It was sometimes just installing, malware sniffers and other things on their own laptops and bringing them into the school. So be sure you know where you're using this stuff before you go out using it, because it sounds fun, but then you get in a jam.
When I handed it to my nephew, he was going back to college, and I'm like, dude, you can control every television on campus with this device. I'm like, don't do anything without permission. Like that's the golden rule is you gotta have
TV
permission.
be gone?
Yeah, it is. Well, my favorite firmware for that now is called TVB Mine, and it runs on the M5 stack hardware. and it's
Yeah.
got like a timer on it. So it was a conference once, and I set one of these on the table, and it has a timer where it sends a bunch of on off commands. It's the same command, right? On off on a TV,
Right.
and it sends a bunch of the things, and the TV turns
Just
off.
a toggle.
Yeah, and then it waits like 3 minutes, and then it turns all the TVs back on, and so the TVs were just flipping back to on to off, right?
So can you
And you had
broadcast your own
permission to
stuff
do that.
like Max Headroom?
I did. I had permission. There's permission, but there's also like leave things as you found them too. Like just don't go messing something up, even if it's something stupid as turning a TV on and off. Like if it was on, like just put it back to where it was,
So
kind of thing, and no one really cares about stuff like that. It's not really illegal to turn off a TV. I mean, I suppose someone could make a case for it, but
I brought one to work once, a TV Be Gone. I remember it was the first project that I soldered back at
me too. Yep.
The first year of what was it called in Louisville? DerbyCon.
DerbyCon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they walked me through soldering. I learned how to solder. And I took it to work and told my boss what it did, and he got really excited. He goes like right outside the cafeteria and uses it on one of the TVs, and those TVs are on 24/7. Right? Did not turn back on.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also that. It's a great point, Adrian. Sometimes you mess with something in the real world, and you're like, oh no, I can't put it back to the way
Same
it
thing
was.
would have happened if he used a remote to do it, but the fact
True.
that it was you still broke it.
Don't test and prod, and that goes for your home network where your wife and kids have to actually work, or your TV, in which it's an expensive brick when you start mucking with the firmware and the technical aspect.
I mean, these are powerful hack. I mean, even the Bluetooth low energy spam attacks. If you start launching that in public, and we've talked about it before, and this is why you want a lab at home, right? Like if you got an old iPhone in the drawer, that's the place to test this stuff. But if you're out in public, man, people have monitors for diabetes. They've got hearing aids. And if you start spamming Bluetooth low energy, you will impact some of those devices so much
you
so
can physically hurt somebody.
I stopped doing it in public. Even if I was standing with people like, oh, like show me how that attack works. I'm like, we got to be away from people, or we got to make sure there's not other people around. You do it in a crowded room, you could impact things unintentionally.
Yeah, some of those attack types, there is no targeting with it. Like if you do GPS spoofing, it screws everything up, right?
Right.
To be fair, vendors need to do better.
Target one device.
I agree. Vendors need to do better. However, I don't think law enforcement is going to have that same attitude when they come over. So
one thing, talking about splitting things out for safety, I think two things I wanted to mention that I find really useful when setting up all this stuff, because you're setting up different accounts, you find very quickly, like something you set up a month ago, you pull it out of a drawer, you plug it in, you're like, shit, what was that password? Right.
Yeah.
So I find a password manager really, really helpful here. And I also find Run Zero really, really helpful here, because they have a free tier. And like just earlier, we were talking about setting up Security Onion. I was like, what is the name of that Netgear switch? Like what is the model of that? And I pop into Run Zero and type in Netgear, and it's right there. The product number is right in Run Zero. Like it detects the exact model of it, which is a GS105 EV2, which is probably the cheapest thing you can buy. For $40, you can set up a span port.
Run Zero is great too. I mean, even just to run your home network and identify all the devices there. While it's not your lab, it's your home network. You may find that whatever device you plugged in, like, oh, that's listening on this port on the network. That's kind of interesting. It's good to have that.
Know your own stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's up to 100 devices, the community edition of Run Zero. But they give you like all the enterprise features. Like mine's plugged into cloud. Like I can see all my AWS.
Yeah, and
assets.
even the Wi-Fi just monitoring tools, like I spun them up, and I was like, what is that Wi-Fi network? I don't recognize it. I'm like, it's not on all the time. And I realized my lights at my home office, when I turn them on, advertise a Wi-Fi network, an open Wi-Fi network.
Because that's how you set them up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, if I didn't have the monitoring tool, and that's a great learning environment, right? So now I'm like, oh, I got a light. Now I can start, doing some testing on that. What does it do? What happens when I connect to it? You know, that kind of thing. So
I would also like, one thing that we didn't cover earlier was not discounting the cloud as a place to have a playground. Like there are great, like DigitalOcean has great cheap droplets. Shark Tech. If you guys aren't using Shark Tech, like I can't recommend Shark Tech enough. From
what is Shark Tech?
Oh, Shark Tech's like, so they're like AWS or DigitalOcean. They're just they're not quite as well known. Buddy of mine runs it. One of the best interfaces I have, and you can pick your monthly price, and it will give you the access and let you build all the way up until your tier, and you just don't go over your monthly price. And their tech
See,
stack
that's
is
great.
Phenomenal.
I love that.
Because like the first time, like I remember I wrote the BlackBerry Enterprise Server benchmark for CIS, which Center for Internet Security have a lot of benchmarks, which they never paid me for, by the way. And to do that, you know, because I didn't have any hardware in the house that could run all the stuff that I needed to run. There just was not enough RAM in the house. So I was like, okay, I'll just set this up on Amazon. I'm running like extra large instances here. These are like $30 an hour or something like that. Like it was really expensive. So the moment I was done, I would shut all that stuff down. Right. And when I had time to work on it, I'd fire up the domain controller, Exchange, all the stuff that you needed to run to use Bez and immediately, you know, because that, you know, extra large instances, like that's going to hurt your wallet real quick. So it's cool that, like you're saying, you can set a budget, Tyler, and it doesn't go over that budget
on it. And it's the interface is so much nicer. It's so clean. It's much different experience in like AWS or Amazon or even DigitalOcean. Like it's actually intuitive. They've got default images. The security on that side is super solid, and I've never had an issue with their stuff. And
I love that advice though. Like you should have actual hardware locally. You should have virtualization stuff locally, firewall switches locally, but also you should have one of these cloud accounts where you can spin up a Linux box or two. You know, like I've done a Pi-hole instance, or I want to stand up some kind of web server or something, a listener server on the internet.
needs to come back to something on the internet.
Exactly. Like and to have that capabilities, is really nice.
Or just add that to your hybridized network so that you know, you can say, well, I've got local, I've got hypervisor stuff here on site, and I'm connecting through a VPN to another remote site. Like I said, we do that. I try to do that with classes where they've got VPN to VPN, you know, like that's the Singapore office. And, you know, we do that more in like networking classes and things, but I think it's an important thing. And I absolutely think that having cloud-based resources for your home lab is great. I agree completely with Tyler. It just, this starts to get, you have to be real careful with this stuff.
Now, I am a fan of Tailscale, but Tyler, you kind of made a face when I talked about Tailscale. But I am a fan because it's a free account. You get 5 users and 200 devices. I don't know how many devices you get.
You can use it completely offline. You don't have to use their stuff at all.
Right, and they've actually made some inroads to let you host it yourself. But you can create a free account with Tailscale. You can have routers, right? So if you've got another setup somewhere, you can have one advertise routes and bridge networks together. You can put it on any computing device, and it's part of your Tailscale. But the other thing I don't know if they really advertise this, but it can act like a VPN server. So you can also set up an exit node on your Tailscale. And this is what I do. So I have Tailscale in 2 different locations on a bunch of different devices. I've got routers, and I actually spun up a small cloud server, and I made that an exit node. So if I'm in a place that's doing some kind of filtering, I was actually at a soccer event, Tyler, and I tried to go to like a hacking website. It was classified as a hacking website. It's like, you can't do that. I'm like, oh, watch me. And I just fired up Tailscale and used my exit node, and it was totally fine. So, and that's all free. And like, you should do that. If you're building a lab, I think you should use Tailscale. Now, some people I think are concerned about the security because you're outsourcing it to Tailscale. Is that the primary concern?
Not to me. I mean, if it's a lab, I don't care that much about the security.
I don't like Tailscale on my KVMs installed from China, but
I don't like other people. Yeah, I want to install the Tailscale and control it and put my login, and it does my keys. And yes, exactly. Agreed.
Another thing that's good is Cloudflare tunnels. That's how I let people reach my infrastructure from the outside without opening ports.
Nice. So it's probably similar to Tailscale. Yeah.
Tailscale
except
and
in
ngrok.
Tailscale, you have to have your own cloud server. With Cloudflare Tunnel, you don't even have to have a cloud server at all.
Oh, interesting. So you can do it all
People-
offline or
What's it called,
outside
Sam?
of their cloud.
Cloudflare Tunnels.
Cloudflare tunnels.
Cloudflare. Okay.
And so what happens is people can just connect to Cloudflare and then get into your home network, and you don't have any public server at all involved. You're just choosing
Yeah.
Cloudflare as the intermediary.
Right. That's how Tailscale works. So I was able
Yeah,
to
that's-
close
that's
down
how I
any.
use.
I don't have anything that faces the internet. I hop on my Tailscale, and it's basically a virtual private network.
But you do
So
have to
I
have one
was on
cloud
a-
server. Yeah.
Yes.
I was on a plane and using Tailscale plus Rustdesk, I was able to use this computer like I was sitting right in front of it. It was incredible. Just airplane Wi-Fi has come a long way,
Nice.
especially if you get one of the Starlink ones. I was using one of those, and I could have done this from on the plane. Like I had enough bandwidth for doing this.
It's what I put on the AR glasses and then just, take my video call and act like I'm talking to myself with the AR glasses.
Well, the KVM stuff we were talking about before the show too is really interesting. If you're building a lab and you want to put some of the gear in a different location, but you still want physical access to it, definitely control the network access to those KVM devices. I mean, you can go online today and watch a number of different videos and read posts about vulnerabilities. Tom's Hardware just disclosed, it's actually an older finding from earlier this year, but there was a microphone listening device inside of the KVM, which is concerning. So the security is not great on these cheaper ones. Pi KVMs are about $400, but now they're sub $100 KVMs that if you don't have a BMC, you can just add this little device. And if your hacking lab is in the basement or whatever, you can access it just like you're sitting in front of it, which when you're learning is probably something that you'll use because inevitably you'll mess something up. You'll mess up the networking or something will happen. And now you don't you have to physically be near the device. You can connect to it remotely. So
Left that boot drive in the back.
Yep. Yeah, they got ones that are like PCI cards that sit in there that you connect to your motherboard so you can remotely power on, off, rebuild the OS. It's
The Jet
access
KVM
the
comes
BIOS.
with that. I've got that one.
Yep. Yep. Nano KVM has a similar thing, I believe. And they've come way down in price. But what we've observed so far, even what's public, is at the sacrifice of security. So.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Jet KVM by default, there's no password set on it. You
Definitely
can
set a password. Yeah, 100% set a password.
There is a cloud mode, but again, like with Tailscale, like I'm finding I'm less and less tempted to connect anything to cloud because Tailscale just gives that to me without me having to trust somebody else.
Right, exactly.
So I don't have to get into like a AnyDesk or a TeamViewer situation where who knows what I'm routing through, right? I don't know.
Exactly. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for talking about the topic today of building a home lab. Hopefully, there was a lot of tips in there. People hopefully learned a lot from all of us collectively. I want to thank everyone for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. Over and out.